I'm Eric Loy, and welcome to Eric Loy Interviews. On this podcast, we talk to folks from the VTuber community about their channels, their talents, their stories, where they come from, and their plans for the future. We are joined by Captain Sarlo. Hello, Captain.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
Well, thanks for coming on. Tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I am a VTuber, sort of newer to the VTuber space, just in the past couple of years. But I also do a lot of stuff in person where I work at a library. Yeah.
Yeah, so you've already been on for a while. I've seen a couple of your streams that were in the past. So you have been doing the VTubing for a bit. What got you into it in the first place?
So I was already streaming when I found out about VTubing, but I didn't feel comfortable having my face showing when I streamed.
Yeah.
So then when I found out about VTubing, I was like, wait, I could have a little character that represents me instead. And so that was very appealing to me to still have that sort of like person-to-person interaction in the stream medium without having to actually show my physical face.
I think that's one of the wonderful things about this VTubing is that people who normally might be a little afraid to get out and show their talents and entertain people can, I'm not going to say hide, but can at least use a medium to get across that while still being comfortable. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I like being able to have that because I feel a lot more comfortable with it now than I did without having any camera at all, because it still gives a little bit of that like animated, like little bit of that reaction that I'm having without having to show my physical face.
And you do get to and it's still you. It's still you reacting. You're not playing, playing a character, reading a script, that type of thing. It's you reacting through that character.
Correct. Well, some people do VTube with a story, and they have like a character that has like designated lore and everything, which may be like them, but sort of to the side. I am considered an out-of-character VTuber, where I'm just me, but using one of my characters as essentially my person stand-in.
Yeah, it gives you just that little extra bit of comfort that it's not a concrete block barrier between you and the folks who are listening and watching, but it's just enough for you to be comfortable enough to keep going.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can see a lot of folks doing this, and I think it's just absolutely great because it does give people who are uncomfortable with being in front of audiences. I was in radio for a long time. We had people who would be able to go out and walk in front of audiences of thousands of people, but you put them in a studio with a microphone in front of them and they just absolutely freeze up. It's just a question of comfort.
Yeah, and getting used to streaming in general it takes a bit because it's very different from what most people do in their daily lives. And then to be able to add in that animated element helps it feel a little bit more comfortable isn't the word I'm looking for, but a little bit more correct for me, just because like that's the best way I can describe it, because it helps me remember to like the way like to keep track of the way I'm moving my body, like facing the webcam and stuff like that. It helps a bit more with that side of it as well for like keeping physically present. Because like I can play video games and I can ramble all I want, but I also have to keep in mind how the camera is tracking me without, again, having to show the physical face.
Yeah, and you don't want to be getting too out of control while doing the video game, because then you look up and check the monitor and find that your your model is all over the place and you weren't paying attention to it.
Exactly. It's sort of like, I think the best way I could describe it is sort of like puppetry in a way with VTubing, because of course it's about like it copies your movements of your body, but it also depends on what kind of model you have, what kind of tracking you have. And so, for the most part, it's more of like a puppetry of like it follows your head movements, it follows moving up and down, that sort of thing. But while some others, like for 3D models, they might also have hand tracking,
Hmm.
which is a bit more like actually conveying your physical movements. Meanwhile, the 2D tends to be a bit more like puppeting.
Hmm. Yeah, I understand that. It's a situation too where you get folks say, well, they're acting like a play. It's not really acting in that situation. You're just in your case anyway. It seems like you're using more of a player icon to like in a video game. This is your icon you're using.
Right, yeah. I use Captain as that sort of placeholder. And Captain themselves is a character that I have made that I've actually like been working on, but the way that I use them in VTubing is just to replace my face. Like I don't act like them, I don't talk like them. I just use them as a stand-in for me.
Mm. Well, radio folks did that a lot. We talked on the radio, and we usually had a face for radio. We didn't like it. You know, people who do audio types of things don't generally like to do the video sort of thing, and this is kind of a way where VTubers can have a little bit of both worlds.
Exactly, yeah. And that's what I really liked about it is that you could have both.
Well, it does it certainly does allow a lot of folks who have certain situations where I know you've seen it that where people who may not even be able to get out of their room during the day or are completely afraid of talking to people, getting out in public, get a chance to show their talents and entertain people through this medium.
Exactly. It's really been good for especially for me. I have extreme social anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
and so I get incredibly nervous interacting with people in person. And I am also autistic,
Mm-hmm.
so I have difficulties sometimes like understanding people around me because of their like physical like um emotions that they're showing off, and I maybe am not picking up on the cues and everything. And then here, I don't have to worry about that. Like, just streaming in general, I don't have to worry about that. But then I can still show off some of, like, my excitement. Like, people can tell when I'm excited and I'm, like, bopping my head side to side or doing, like, some of my swaying side to side that I do. Like, they can still see that I'm doing those movements and I can actually feel comfortable doing those stimming movements as opposed to in person where I get sort of nervous about it.
Yeah, I never thought about that, and I know a lot of folks who are on the autistic scale, but here, in a way, you can control your environment, and that helps you concentrate on what you're doing.
Exactly, yeah. And like being able to have that sort of like controlled environment is really helpful for me. And I know that it's also been helpful for other VTubers who have other disabilities, that it's easier to be able to just portray yourself this way. And some people talk about the disabilities that they have, and some people don't want to at all. And this medium allows them to do both. You can either be very open about it, like I'm very open about my autism with my audience, um, while other people may not want to be so open about what they're going through, but they don't have to be because they get to put on the avatar and get to basically embody that version of themselves.
Eh, We may not even know what a person is going through, what their situations are, if we get involved with the avatar and don't look behind the avatar or don't get a chance to look behind the avatar.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think this is an amazing medium for folks to be able to do that from their own homes. And while there is a cost, obviously, to get in, you have to have the computer, you have to have setups, you have to get models, which isn't exactly something you can just walk out on the street and get, something that works correctly. But with that, you get to talk to people potentially from all over the world and show them what you can do.
you do. And there are also like cheaper ways of getting into it. Like, I know that I'm personally on the lower end of how much money I have put into VTubing, but there's always, like, people have made some already rigged models that people can get for lower prices. There are some customizable rigged, like pre-rigged avatars that people can get if they want the 2D experience. Um, there are programs that are free that you can make a 3D model with if you have that sort of skill set to be able to use that. And then there's always PNG tubing, which some argue is not VTubing, but I think falls under the banner because it's using a character to represent yourself, and it's just like two still images of your character that bounce up and down. So if you can get that kind of art done by someone, or even just like a sketch, then the program to use with it is free, and you don't have to worry about like spending out of pocket for a super expensive model. There are options for those who don't have that kind of money as well. I just wanted to clarify to make sure that people know that, like, cost does not have to be a barrier. There are plenty of affordable options that people can use, even like either at the beginning or for the whole time, just depending on what they feel comfortable with.
Well, I would hate to see somebody spend a four figures and get all the setup and then decide three streams in that it's not for them, and it's too much pressure to do this and they don't get anything out of it. I would think it'd be better to start off to see whether or not it's even for you in the first place.
Exactly, yeah, that's definitely recommended. And that's one of the good things about there being so many options. Don't feel pressured into spending a lot of money if you're going to get into VTubing, because there are quite a few people who are like, oh, you shouldn't. Like, I was told once, oh, you shouldn't spend less than $1,500 on the rigging. And I just went, do you think I have that kind of money just like sitting around?
I don't think our two cars over here cost $1,500 at this point.
So, like, people have this belief that you have to put a lot of money into it in order to get anything out of it, and I really don't think that's true.
Yeah.
And I don't want people to think that that has to be a barrier to getting started.
Well, once you get started, it's a question of now: is it for you? Is it fun for you? What do you want to do with your channel? Did it take, since you were already streaming in one way? Was it hard for you to convert to the actual VTubing scene?
It wasn't really hard for me to convert over. I did have a little bit of difficulty getting involved in the community just because I am nervous interacting in communities.
Right.
And so I didn't really know how to get involved in the VTuber community until like the last year and a half or so. But as for swapping over, it was mostly easy. All I had to do really was remember to start the programs that I needed. That was really the big thing for a while, was remembering, okay, I have to get this program booted up, I have to get this program booted up, I have to get this set up to the point where it's not showing any data and it just has my model. And to be fair, I did start off with a 3D model, which does require different programs. So I had to get used to those programs, and then I swapped to a 2D model last year, I believe. And so I had to get used to using different programs for that. But for the swapping over and actually using the character, that wasn't very difficult for me. But again, I didn't really get into the community itself until more recently. But that's more to do with my own anxiety.
Now, I was wondering about that because you mentioned the social anxiety, but a lot of streamers kind of rely on collaborations with other streamers. Have you done a lot of that? Is that something you want to do?
I've done a couple of collabs in the past. I would like to do more. I reach out occasionally, and sometimes the timing just doesn't quite work out.
Mm.
I'd like to reach out every once in a while to see if I can do a collab, but I also really like making content sort of on my own. So like, if there's something that I'm really interested in, like, I've actually been looking into doing a lot of these talking about VTubing things because I really enjoy doing that. I like sharing the information that I have. I like talking about my experiences and stuff like that. And so that's been the majority of what I've been applying to lately for collaboration content. But I have done normal collaboration content in the past, and I will likely be doing some in the future. I just can't talk about that right now.
Well, I'm not going to force anything out of you, but
No, no,
I
no, no
appreciate you coming
worries.
on here and talking about it because it is something that folks who are interested in it and kind of kicking around, well, should I do it or not? They need to know the ins and outs of what is going to be required of them in order to have fun doing it. First, I imagine first thing you have to do is have fun, I would think.
Yeah, having fun is a very important part of streaming in general, I would say. Content creation as a whole, but especially when you are doing stuff live, if you're not having fun, your audience can tell.
Right.
So if you're having a lower day, if you're getting like genuinely frustrated at something, your audience can tell.
Yep.
And so some people will say, oh, no matter what, you have to stream to stay consistent, even if it's a bad day. I would argue, especially while starting, that if you're having an off day, consider just taking the day off because your audience will be able to tell that the vibes are off.
Yeah.
And if you're starting to get an audience, that audience is going to care about you. Like bigger audiences, maybe it's different, but like with a small audience, because I've had a small audience for a while, they genuinely will be like, hey, are you feeling okay? Like, do you want to cut out early? Like, are you
Yeah.
okay? Or if I have to call it because of, say, a health issue or something, they're like, take care of yourself first.
Right. Right.
So,
So
like,
what is that?
especially at the beginning, you have a lot more of that flexibility where you don't have to
Right.
rigidly maintain to your schedule or else you won't get a paycheck kind of thing.
What does that do for you, being on the scale and being someone with some social anxiety, when you get that type of feedback from your audience?
It's honestly it surprises me every time for some reason. Like even though I know that they want me to like put myself first and stuff, I sometimes get really into the mindset of I am a content creator. Some people are paying me to make content. I have to be making content, or else it is like, what am I providing the people that are trying to support me? And so, like, anytime I have to cancel and people are like, hey, take care of yourself, or hey, you seem kind of out of it. Do you want to, maybe you should call it early and get some rest? It, it's really comforting because it reminds me that people don't just see me as like a content machine kind of thing,
Right.
because like once when you get bigger you definitely do sort of get that level of being seen as just like a content producer.
Mm.
And so I imagine as I grow that will eventually start happening, but there will still be people who are like, hey, take care of yourself first so that then you can make content. And it's really comforting to have that kind of experience with my community.
Have you experienced the other side of it yet, with the possibility of a toxic person showing up in your chat?
I there was one in particular that my friends and I still talk about.
Mm.
It was very quickly handled, but it was someone who had been in the chat for like months at that point, and something that I said, because he was like mini modding, which for people who don't know, it's when someone gets in your chat and they start doing like moderator duties of like, hey, you can't say that, blah 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 blah.
Right.
So he was like doing that even though I had a moderator in the chat who was actually my mother.
Yeah.
Um and so I was like, hey, bud, I don't need you to do that. Thank you, though. And he just, like, lost it. He
Wow.
started cursing me out. My mom tried to, like, tone him down. He started cursing my mom out.
Whoa.
He started, like, throwing, like, so much stuff. And I was just sort of like, huh?
Yeah. That'll catch you right between the eyes all of a sudden, and a heel turn in the middle of everything. But yeah,
Yeah, it
it
was
does happen.
wild.
It does happen both ways, but the positive, I imagine, outweighs anything like that.
Absolutely, yeah. I've definitely had a lot more positive experiences than negative ones. I've had some, honestly, I've had more just bizarre experiences as opposed to negative ones. Like, there will be people who come in and start asking you, because when you have a feminine sounding voice,
Right.
they assume that you are woman, and then they're kind of weird sometimes.
Yeah,
Like, I've had
sometimes.
people try to ask me where I live in real life. I've had people try to, like, ask me, like, intimate details about my in person life. And I talk about my in person life, but I'm not telling people where I live. I'm not telling people, like, in depth about my personal life. But that is a thing that those of us with feminine voices, whether people are female or not, that we kind of know is going to happen. Like, we shouldn't have to expect it, but we know that it's going to happen. We know that people are going to come, people are going to say inappropriate comments, people are going to try to flirt, people are going to try to be creepy because they view us as female because of our voices.
Right. Well, sometimes you can't underestimate people. I know that from years as a talk show host. Yeah, every once in a while you're just going to get something that you're just going to have to brush off and keep going and not lose track of why you're there in the first place.
And a lot of the VTuber community is, or at least portrays on the screen as female.
Right.
So there's also some people who will come in having certain expectations from what they've seen of VTubing.
Yeah.
Which I would just say, if you're going to get into VTubing, just like establish your boundaries and like stick to them, and don't feel bad about sticking to them. Because like I've had a couple times where I felt a little bit bad sticking to my boundaries because I'm a smaller creator and like, well, I don't want to like completely cut people off because I'm a smaller creator and blah, blah, blah. But like, stick to your boundaries. You want to be comfortable. Like, that's the whole thing, is if you want to do this, you want to feel comfortable, and you don't owe anyone like anything that makes you uncomfortable, no matter what they're expecting from the quote unquote VTuber scene.
Captain, it's been a very quick 20 minutes, and I absolutely appreciate you coming on. Uh, it's been a wonderful talking to you. I hope we get you on again because I think you've got a lot more to share about this. Not only your experiences, but kind of a how-to sort of thing, how to get involved in it, how to keep going in it, and I hope you can come back here real soon.
I would be glad to. Thank you again for having me.
So, folks who want to watch your streams, how do they get a hold of it?
So I am under Twitch at Captain Sarlo, CaptainSarlo. I do my streams on Twitch twice a week, and then I also am on VStream under the same username, and I simulcast to VStream during my other 2 days of the week, and I do a third day on VStream. I can also be found on Twitter under the same username, and I can also be found on YouTube under the same username.
Thank you for listening to Eric Loy Interviews. Join us again next time when we talk to another member of the always interesting VTuber community.